not those industries like, manufacturing and unorganized sector where this conversation should be happening. Those are the industries that I'm leaving out. I'm talking about IT, I'm talking about startup ecosystem, I'm talking about fashion, retail, news, media, advertising. Second, everyone wants to do something at least daily.
Right.
They don't want to solve everything, but one thing that they all have understood, a majority has understood, is that kuch to karna hai.
Good afternoon, everyone. And today we have Ms. Pallavi here with us, and we are your hosts, Tanika and Devika, today. And Pallavi is coming from UNGENDER, which is a pioneering platform committed to transforming workplace through that diversified compliance solution. Their focus is basically on encouraging gender inclusivity, and UNGENDER offers a range of services, including the POSH toolkit and maternity benefit capsules, which are extremely essential in today's workplace. And UNGENDER navigates through the gender-related compliance challenges seamlessly, and it is backed by, of course, Ms. Pallavi here with us. So welcome, Pallavi. It's lovely to have you on board. Going forward, I think the first thing that we like to delve into is your entrepreneurship journey, Pallavi, which has been truly inspirational, and you've marked by your involvement in numerous early stage startups. So we'd love to know your insights and your experiences working with these startups, and how your journey and what motivated you to start this journey, especially something like Ungendered, right?
Got it. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me here, and also getting me to talk about the journey, not just for myself, but also for the work that Ungender. And a small correction, I don't think Ungender is backed by me. It's backed by every person who is right now part of the team, has been part of the team at some point in time, in any possible, association. So it's a thanks to everybody who has contributed to this. The main question that you asked, right? The entrepreneurial
Yeah.
journey. I think it's the same which is applicable to every person who has become an entrepreneur. There's a problem that was bothering persistently to that person, in this case, to me. It gets highlighted, and then you start looking for solutions around it. And then you find different ways, right? You start looking for companies which are solving this problem. You start looking for other
Yeah.
individuals who may possibly be thinking in a similar manner. If you do find them, then they become your co-founders. If you don't find them, and the problem is still persisting and it's still bothering you, then you just pick it up. And that's how anybody becomes an entrepreneur. The scale and everything else, the revenue pipeline, business plan, everything comes
Yeah.
after that. The first thing is you were bothered by a problem, you couldn't find anybody else working on it, or if they were working on it, then you didn't really see that that was the only way to solve it. And then you say that, okay, I'm going to pick it up.
Yeah.
That is the same thing, nothing unique about my entrepreneurial journey in terms of that. Everybody is born in this manner as an entrepreneur.
So Pallavi, in your case, what was the problem that motivated you? Like, what was the problem that you actually found and you wanted to solve?
So, interestingly, I am, of course, born in India and brought up in a very diverse and inclusive society in Philippines, where inclusion was not something which was picked up as an agenda or as a subject matter. It was something which was a very, like the same way that diversity is such a natural part of our day-to-day lives. We look around and we see people who are different from us, and all of us are coexisting in one single space. Yes, there are frictions. Yes, all of us are trying to create space. We all look at each other and sometimes wonder, why is this person different from me? All those things are bound to happen.
Yeah.
But the way that diversity is like inevitable, inclusion sometimes also after a period of time becomes a very natural course. So I'm a product of that kind of space where we weren't really talking about at least gender from an agenda point of view, that how do we include more gender in the workplaces or in society. So coming to India, you can call it a problem, you can call it an observation. Suddenly, it seemed like that every place that I was visiting, there was a lens related to gender, especially women. I will start with women because we have to be very
Yeah.
specific about when we say gender. For today's right now, at least we should limit it to binary. And because
Yeah.
that was what I was thinking at that point in time, that when I was appearing for interviews and when I was going to workplaces, the somehow if you have to put color to humans, only one single color
Yes.
that I was seeing, and it just hits you very differently free.
True.
Um, and you can apply it to any specific category. I know I was visualizing my world in India from a color space, but you can look at it from the space that, okay, your eating habits are suddenly very different and people are not just checking, is
Yeah.
this something that you would like to eat
Yeah.
also? And then it got complemented with other conversations when you start going for jobs or you start talking to other women. The infrastructure in question, the timelines are in question. What time you will be going to work? How will you be? How you'll be traveling back and forth to work? Who will be
Traveling.
your team members? And these questions were very alien, especially after having stayed in a different space for a very long time. If
Different.
you start hearing these questions, it's not a natural query that comes to you. And I just started talking
Yeah.
to more and more women and men around, and slowly realized that India has a lot of laws to promote women in workplaces, or actually in every workplace, I mean, for that matter, in every space. And so legal
True.
side became a very curious side for me, and I was very intrigued by the fact that why do we need so many laws to protect and promote someone? Because the number of laws, or the higher number of laws, also show you the higher number of threats that are there, or the hurdles that are there.
True.
And that's a very plain maths, Devika, that was happening in my head, that why? And I think the journey just started from there.
Absolutely.
That this of course we can't approach making the entire world, country, ecosystem, industry, or even a company diverse in all possible facets at one go. It's a journey. So for us at Ungender, the un part started with the gender part, and that's what we have picked up.
That's great, Pallavi. Just to continue this question that Tanika asked, we would love to know that being an entrepreneur in such a competitive market space, what challenges did you face while developing Ungender, which like offers such a unique service to the people? And are these compliances, how were they in place?
See, never looked at the competition, Devika. Thank you for asking that also, because in a manner, in 2014, I think at least I and my then team, if I have to look back, we created our own competition. I mean, I was running my earlier venture at
Yeah.
that time, and we were in the space of legal education. And when this specific law, workplace sexual harassment law, came into picture, the first thing that we did was let's certify experts, because
Right,
you have a law here that tells companies that they're supposed to implement and adhere certain guidelines, but who is going to tell them how to do it, right? So the
of
what
course.
is there, but the how is missing, and knowledge and expertise is missing from the ecosystem. So we actually I've been instrumental in creating India's, and together with my then co-founders, of course, not taking away the credit from the entire team at that point in time, created India's first certificate program on diversity and inclusion and workplace sexual harassment prevention. And that has contributed
Yeah.
to a lot of industry leaders that we see right now also. I will not say all of
Amazing.
them, because I will only take credit for a major portion of that. But the point here is that not really looking at competition at ever. In fact, just yesterday we were filling up some form and some company had asked us as part of the RFP, who do you see as your competitors? And it's always brings smile internally to my team, because it's the ecosystem that we have always looked at, and we need more and more
Yeah.
people. In fact, if you're looking at the competition is very less.
True.
Very less. That means that we need more people to join this ecosystem. We need more people. The only thing that you have to see is, are there NGOs which are working in this space because they work from a very different metric, or is this a business
Different.
advisory which is working in this space because we work with a very different agenda, and that's the only way
Right.
that we divide the competitors' space.
Lovely. So, Pallavi, how does Ungender contribute to the development and advancement of the society? And what specific changes does it aspire to bring about through the services that you offer?
So we've been looking at society as a whole. Of course, we have to choose where we want to, headquarters. That kind of
Of
says,
course.
middle ground
Yeah.
is workplaces,
Hmm.
right? We're not looking at changing the mindset of people in family setup. We are not looking at the
Yeah.
public infrastructure and saying how do we ungender that. So our battleground is very much aligned and sorted in terms of companies that we want to work with, but we are approaching it from multiple facets because it's the entire ecosystem of solution that you will need to look at. So one is of course the
Yeah.
laws and the frameworks that already exist. What are they, and do the larger public, especially from the space of beneficiary, from the space of people who
Yeah.
are given the responsibility to implement those laws? Very simple. Laws are created at a central level, then state departments are given the
Right. Hmm.
responsibility, and then they have to perform certain duties to make sure that it just doesn't remain as something on textbook. So one is people who are supposed to implement. Then there are people who are supposed to implement in their respective spaces, be it state level,
Spaces.
company
Yeah.
level, individual level, district level, and so on and so forth. Then third is the beneficiary side of it, because there's no use creating
Yeah.
these implementation mechanisms and building these infrastructures till the time that beneficiaries are aware that something like this exists for them. So there's implementation, education, awareness, and then the last part is all these three things will fail if we don't really have sufficient monitoring mechanisms there. So this entire
True.
spectrum is where Ungender has been working. In the last couple of years, what we did realize was that scale requires assistance. Assistance both in terms of either people, you bring more humans into the team, or you take assistance from technology. So, Devika, now we are using technology also as a way to
Right.
create replicable, scalable mechanisms to reach out to as many people as possible who can benefit from it.
That's lovely because, like you said, there's so many stakeholders in something like this, Pallavi, and everybody plays a very essential role. From somebody being, having the awareness or the knowledge that they have such a benefit to their use, to somebody even adapting to it. It can be very different. So even your approach when you go to, spreading awareness to such different various levels might be very different, and that must be challenging also in its own self,
It
I believe.
is, and we have, I think 10 years ago, Tanika, I would have looked at, let's say, companies who are given the responsibility to
Yeah.
adopt. Let's talk about POSH Act, like just the
Yeah.
use case here. I would have looked at companies from a very different space and said, how difficult can it be? Right? Like how difficult can it be? You have to have a policy, you have to appoint
Yeah.
members, you have to run awareness programs, and so on and so forth. Now, every industry, like now at this, like after spending so much time and talking to so many people around it, like I think almost like thousands of people about the specific law, I will say I'm wiser, and so is the team, wherein now we understand that, okay, this is the space where it's not sufficient that the law exists or guidelines exist. These are the practical issues that companies face. And
Please.
can we create something like, of course, you can't solve for intent, by the way, huh? So that's why I'm not going to give
Yeah.
any explanation on any company's, any stakeholders' behalf. Intent is something that nobody can solve for, so we are also not aiming for it. But what can we solve for? We can solve for cost efficiency. We can solve for
Yeah.
processes and standards. We can solve for replication and standardization. So these are the things that we can solve
Yeah.
for, and only when we understand, let's say, what are the challenges of manufacturing setup, what are the challenges of startup ecosystem, what are the challenges that, let's say,
Yeah.
aviation, mining, and so many other industries are facing. Now, can we solve for them? And there we are just snatching that, okay, there are a lot of leaders who are now waiting, that have the intent, but we
Yeah.
don't know how. And that's where we step in.
Right.
Understood. So, like you said, with various industries, you see various problems or challenges, right? And you've worked extensively in the, entrepreneurial ecosystem to know that, when you're coming from that mindset and you have that intent, the challenges can be massive. But when you see the entire workforce and workspace in general in India, what do you think are the major challenges that, that are often felt when it comes to empowering women in a workplace? Like, just generally, which you've seen as a pattern over your course of
You're
working.
asking me what are the challenges that I have seen when it comes to the
Empowering women in the workplace.
empowering
Yeah.
women in the workplace. I think the statement right now in the ecosystem um, misplaces the entire objective a little bit, and I'll tell you why. No business starts with the objective of empowering women. No business has started. Like, they have started from the
No
premise of
business. True.
making a business, like, money,
Yeah.
revenues, cash flows, and everything. This is a question maybe we can ask to NGOs which are working in this space, or, SDGs and other spaces. So the putting the onus on companies to empower women somehow does not land this as an agenda in the boardrooms. So then I think we are
Yeah.
like rephrasing this entire bit and saying that how can you make the most of the of your workforce? How can you take care of attracting the best possible talent out there? How can you increase your talent retention criteria and so on and so forth? Like, we're telling them the business related conversations and narratives instead of the social impact. Now, in that space, challenges, yes, we can talk about. A lot of companies don't know why they should do it. It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's not about how much money it is going to take, Tanika Devika, right? It's about why should I spend even 5 rupees? Why should I
Right.
spend 5 hours
True.
or even 15 minutes of my discussion time to actually do this? Because nobody has been able to do that calculation for me. Yes, I know that if women also join the workforce, then there will be so much increase in the overall GDP of the country. But a small setup in somewhere in Gurgaon or in Chandigarh or in Bhopal, it's a very difficult match for them to do. That if the country
Yeah.
gains this much, then what's my share in it? And now
Exactly.
suddenly to expect that not only this topic will be picked up by companies, this difficult maths is actually too much to ask. Yes, some companies are able to do it, but who are those companies? Those companies are the ones which are operating at, let's say, with their global counterparts. So whatever data from an economic, gender uh, economics of gender empowerment, if you have to put it, or from the space of introducing more women, right now just women, cis women I'm talking about in the workplace, if you have
Yeah.
to talk about that, those numbers specifically industry wise do not exist in our country right now. And that's the first challenge that I see.
Yeah.
How do you convince somebody to actually take up this time? The second one is
Yeah.
sorry, the second one is it's also about this is such a there are not enough case studies that exist for people to learn from.
Yeah.
See, founders or leaders listen when leaders speak. They're not going to be
True.
listening to people who are coming from the other side of the table. It's nice to hear them once in a
Yeah.
while, but there's not much relatability because if I need to create something, I'm just going to go and look at another leader and I say, how have you been able to do it? And if they also are not able to
Yeah.
give an answer, then my source of learning, practical learning, theoretically, I know it will benefit my
Yeah.
company. But
Yeah.
practically, I'm missing the insight of somebody else. So that's another thing. We
True.
don't really have that many structured. Yes, we have a lot of DEI awards. We have a lot of stories that come out now that companies are hiring these many women and this company has this much. But have we really been able to map that this 20% increase or 10% increase of women in a specific company is the only reason that the company's output grew? Is anybody saying
Yeah.
this with that kind of confidence? Is anybody mapping it out?
Yeah.
And there could
Nobody
be a
is.
million
Nobody
reasons
is.
why this could have happened. Am I taking away the contribution? Absolutely not. I'm all up for it because I don't need these numbers to know that. But I'm not the
Yeah.
decision maker. The decision maker are companies right
Yeah.
now. Here, that's the second
Yeah.
thing which is missing. And the third thing is we don't really have that many experts coming from the business sense of it, right? The entire process of solution is also broken, right? So first, companies started thinking
Yeah.
about whether we should have more women in the workforce, right? Even without knowing the why of it and how of it, they said, okay, let's bring. So we have a lot of
Yeah.
amazing companies which are providing women as workforce to organizations, right? That okay, let's
Yeah.
bring them. The next part is then can we retain them? And even after retaining them, what will it take to retain? What does it take to retain them?
Exactly.
That question is the next question that needs to be answered, which requires a different kind of niche advisory. Then there's the next question:
Yeah.
can we? make them grow also? Can they grow in the same manner? Where once again we're talking about very
True.
Indian features of the culture of an organization, right? And
Yeah.
policies, processes, the kind of experience that individual women have in the workforce. So there are a lot of hits and misses happening there. Should we run mentorship
Yeah.
programs? Should we do podcasts with women in our organization to show that, to see is to believe that yes, there are women leaders growing, so you can also grow. We are still figuring
Absolutely.
out the formula for that. So long story
Yeah.
short, and I can go on, but the thing is that the challenge is that the structure to achieving it is still being
Yeah.
figured out. There's no one single approach to it and
True.
one single solution that okay, let's just like hire them. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll put a pause to it right now on this one.
No, I also think you're absolutely right, considering, we see such an evolution that is happening from being such a stigma that, you're not going to hire women to now being open to it and, giving laws which are, equal pay to maternity benefits. And now even paternity benefits is something that has been spoken about at length, because I think that's very much needed, considering if a woman is giving birth, they do need support of the
Of
husband
course.
at any given time and date. And that the shift is definitely happening. But since you've been working within this environment, how do you see people responding to it also? Because I see a lot of people responding to it very positively, whereas I see some segments of the society still being like, no, all of this is, even something like we get wellness leaves in our office. And I have spoken extensively to a lot of women around and even working in bigger organizations, but they're not open to say something like a wellness leave. So, and they're just saying, no, what's the need? That's something that is not required.
Yeah, like they're taken aback with the
Exactly.
thought of it. And they just think, because since it's a very
Yeah.
new concept, a lot of companies have
Yeah.
started giving this. So there's still a lot of stigma around that, whether we should give it or not in a lot of companies.
Yeah, so how do you see the response when it comes to such compliances or such acceptance with terms of that? And not just with regards to women, I'd rather say, there's so many other, LGBTQI, this extensive need for such acceptance. How do you see companies responding? And what has your experience been like,
So
seeing that sort of
I, on
response?
gender, of course, take pride in working with a lot of proactive leaders. And I know it usually gets highlighted that I talk more about the things
Yeah,
that people are not doing versus the things that people are doing. So I'm going to park aside the amazing people who are already doing amazing work and focus more on why the not so amazing people
yeah,
are not doing the amazing work. Uh, why are they not doing it, and what has been our experience? Um, happens when we start this conversation is people are first going to go and check within the organization, hey, do we need it? And whoever are these policies being
yeah,
created for, right? They're going to ask them first. Depending on the response that they
yeah,
get from them, is the make or break of it. Because at the end of the day, they're not creating these policies because Pallavi is telling them that it's good. They're not doing this because the society is telling them or there's a conversation going around. I mean, look at the number of, like every time you will see one
yeah,
company announcing the, menstrual leave policy, see that five more they would have like immediately realized. So there's this marketing wave also that happens around it. That's a different thing. But this is the first thing that happens when people think about certain topic, be it paternity leave, be it any of these flexi work policies, be it now we are looking at
yeah,
menstruation leave and other things. If internally they are getting mixed responses, let's say there's a company of 100 employees has 20 women working. And out of those 20 women, they get like 50-50 or a 60-40 divide. What do you think they're going to do? They're not. And
of course they're not
the
gonna
biggest disclaimer
they're
and
not gonna stick
justification
with
that
it.
comes is that we asked them and they said that we don't really need it. Right? So yes,
Yeah,
it's easy to say that companies are not doing it. And of course, I will always ask companies to do something, even if sometimes people, because sometimes you have to create education and space for people also to be able to speak what they need. And to understand that for generations, any
Right.
minority
yeah,
in the workplace or in any space for that matter, after years, if you just suddenly go and tell them, hey, do you want it? They're not
yeah,
going to be in the comfort to say that, yes, we want it, right? Because asking for what you need is also something that has been suppressed for like generations now. But that is the main premise on which majority of the companies are
Yeah.
making a decision. Then comes the cost factor associated with it. Do companies don't want to introduce paternal leave policy? Of course they want to, right? But what's the cost
Yeah.
implication of that, right? That works very different. At an individual level, if they would want to do that at a finance and
Right.
accounting level, they
Yeah.
will not get the clearance that they need. And yes, these are the companies which do aim to be inclusive, and that's another, say, downside of introducing very friendly policies for one specific segment in workplaces. Because if you have not created something for everybody, and I get it, Tanika, like a lot of people say, but we can't create
Yeah.
menstruation leave policy for everybody because not everybody menstruates. I completely agree. But how
Hmm.
about
Yeah.
wellness leave? Like that's a beautiful strategic move that a lot of people, a lot of companies, right? Because a wellness is
Absolutely.
wellness. You
True.
may you should just be able to take a leave just by saying that I'm not feeling
Yeah.
well today. You don't really have to have fever or have an upset stomach and other
Correct.
things. The extreme sense that the world understand before saying that okay, I will
Yeah.
not be coming to office today. I'm just not feeling up to it. But that's a space which very few people will take because they're
Yeah.
always thinking the cost implications side of it. And if you don't implement
True.
these policies in an appropriate manner, if you just introduce these policies for one single segment without thinking it's so much depth of why I'm creating it and why am I creating only for this specific segment? And can I actually create something with a shift in narrative, language, tone, content? Can I create a space for everybody's well being? Because, yes, I understand the world is asking me to
Yeah.
think about wellness of individuals who menstruate. Can I think about what is menstruation and what does it do? And whoever is not menstruating, what happens to them? Do they go through something that will require calling out and we still don't know the name to it? Is it something that is not visible? But even if it's not visible,
Yeah.
can I
Yeah.
still accommodate for it? I think that kind of thought process has to go. But that's a deep work. That's a lot of deep work, which is
Yeah.
what we see when a lot of thoughtful policies come out in the ecosystem, and that's where we go like, okay, wow, somebody really
Hmm.
thought about it. How many are doing it? How many need assistance? Is a question that all of us have answers to as we hear a lot of policies being rolled out. But this is the work. This is the kind of work
Yeah.
that is required.
Right. So we've established there are a lot of challenges that we face, but we would love to focus on any emerging trends that Ungender must have seen or in the field of workplace compliance and the diversity in India and also in comparison of how globally the emerging trends come up.
Hmm. What are the emerging trends in India at this point that you see? There is a conversation, like I've yet to come across a company at least, and see ours is also very segmented. So I don't speak for the entire India Inc. because I don't think the entire India Inc. is sitting online. But there's a large portion which is sensitized to talking about DEI, right? Um,
Yeah.
that portion is sensitized to the notions. Whether they have bought into it or not bought into it is a very different thing, but they are aware. And that's the beautiful journey that the ecosystem has
Yeah.
actually completed in the last 1 decade. It's very rare, at least in the space that I and other entities like Ungender interact with, where people will not know. And I'm talking about not those industries like manufacturing and unorganized sector where this conversation should be happening. Those are the industries that I'm leaving out. I'm talking about IT. I'm talking about startup ecosystem. I'm talking about fashion, retail, news, media, advertising. The companies which are on the net, right? They are aware. Whether they are educated or not
Understood.
is a different question. So that's one thing. Second, everyone wants to do something at least, Devika.
Right.
Right? They don't want to solve everything, but one thing that they all have understood, a majority has understood, is that kuch to karna hai, right? And it could be the smallest thing, and that's where also we see a lot
Yeah.
of. I mean, 3 years ago, I think, other than Women's Day, we were not really seeing this entire, because now, if you see this wave, the whole year there's some DEI related event that we are celebrating
Yes.
someday, and some education and awareness is
Yeah.
happening, which was not there earlier. So in one way or the other, companies are now
True,
aligned
true.
or trying to get themselves educated to one or the other kind of, one or the more kind of diversity segment that they look
Right.
at. The third thing that we're looking at is that we have also seen that instead of solving it on their own, there's a rise in looking for experts for out there.
I totally agree.
Everyone is looking for an
Yes.
expert right now, be it somebody from the lived space or somebody from the academic space or
Hmm.
somebody from the professional experience space. Companies are creating space. Do they have a DEI team? No, I think that's something that's still a journey that we need to take. But do they all have one DEI expert? Not really. But they all are looking for somebody who has done some work in this space. It's almost like sowing that first seed and saying
Right.
that
Yeah,
you can start the conversation and then we'll back you up, which was not there a couple of years ago. So there's a
yeah.
third trend that is there. Of course,
Earlier.
globally, Devika, the journey was faster and way
Hmm, of
ahead.
course.
And, we are running a little behind, but I'm not complaining.
I
Right?
think we're just catching up step by step, but
No,
not
we'll
too
not
far.
catch up. No, no, we'll not catch up. No, no hopes of catching up. Not at all, because I just don't think that we'll be able to catch up the way it is.
Hmm.
Because a lot of other things also
No,
like
no, of course. I just meant that we're catching up with the trends as to what is happening globally. We're beautifully accepting it and the way we're growing it. So,
yes, yes, absolutely. No, I'm aligned with that part.
yeah, yeah.
This third thing that now we see a space being created for DEI as a knowledge, expertise, and
Hmm.
experience in the workplaces. And fourth thing is now we have budgets which are being allocated towards these interventions.
Right.
Earlier, we were all parked under CSR.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's another beautiful trend that
Yeah.
now we hear companies say that we have budget for it. Doesn't matter how big and small, okay? But it's nice to see. It's beautiful to actually see from the space because we
Yeah.
look at DEI as a business mandate and not just as a social mandate.
Yeah.
That companies are now looking at it because by assigning a
Yeah.
budget, no, doesn't matter how small it has now become part of your boardroom conversations and those very important slides that gets presented to the board. And someone out there is asking, we spent,
Yeah.
let's say, 10,000 on this, what's my return? So that pushes to deliver better and work better. So these are the top ones, Devika, that we're looking at. And of course,
Yeah.
goes without saying, we're talking about we have also come up with new vocabularies, by the way.
Hmm.
Earlier, employee engagement was limited to something else. Taking people out and parties, they still stay, weekend getaways, a lot of activities that used to get into, leadership, communication, and all those. Now the word bias,
Yeah.
right, and inclusive, inclusive
Yeah.
management or inclusive leadership,
Inclusive.
bias as a word, bias as a session, bias as an intervention. These terminologies are now part of everything that is being done as
Yeah.
part of an employee journey. Are they hitting the right
Yeah.
place? Not necessarily be true, right? But now, when companies are looking at creating interventions, they just don't want their people to communicate better. They want their team members to communicate in an inclusive manner.
Hmm.
Now, when companies are creating sessions for getting the leadership to introspect and think about better leadership skills and everything, they want them to think from a space of also challenging and addressing their bias, which earlier was not there. These are now slowly becoming part of what does it take.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're a great leader, how can you not be an inclusive leader?
Right.
Right? Uh, and the more aware you become of your biases, the more aware you become
True.
of your communication styles, the micro cues and the affirmations, the better leader that you're going to be. And it's only in a couple of years that we will see that these are actually going to get assigned to the appraisals and the point system also. So this is what we need
Yeah.
because this is where these concepts become very concrete when you
Yeah.
start working with companies.
True, absolutely true. And Pallavi, I think you mentioned about technology. So we'd love to know how Ungendered is also leveraging technologies in order to spread awareness, also to make considering the types of diverse industries, so how are you using or leveraging technology to even make such in compliances with respect to them or spread awareness? So what is your take there, and how is Ungender using the technology to drive the company forward?
Got it. No, thank you once again for asking this. Because, we do believe that nobody can replace humans, but
Yes.
we also believe that humans must take assistance from technology in making themselves more efficient. And this is exactly what we also did at Ungender.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll give you a couple of examples, like use cases that we have been using technology for. A lot of companies come to us for doing their diversity audits,
Yes.
and this is an expensive affair. This is not something that you can just do, like, overnight. And for majority of the companies, this is something that they will do maybe once in their lifetime,
Yeah.
right? And the companies which are doing it on an every year basis, they have now eventually find out their own internal system. But to be able to see what is the diversity, because why do you need to see that? You need to know who your people are so that you can create for them. It doesn't mean that if you don't know, then you will not create, right? You can still
Yeah.
go around creating, but it just allows you to prioritize. So if people in your organization express that they have some, they're, let's say, mostly they are staying with their parents, and or they're staying on their own, it allows you to create better benefits for them. It allows you to understand what kind of specific needs that they will have as they
Yeah.
go about showing up for work. So, but this is not a data that you can collect every day, or even if you have to
Yeah.
collect and update this data every day. Right? It's not something you do it at the beginning of the year and then keep creating it for the rest of the year
Exactly.
like that. People come and people go, and then people are also moving. A
Right.
diversity audit also allows you to navigate how are people progressing in your organization, which allows you to see biases that seep in during appraisals, important projects
Wow.
assignments, and how about people, how attrition rate, your diversity in the attrition also, and so many things. So we used to do it on pen and paper. Then we moved into Excel sheets and other things. And then we just realized that, okay, there is a process in which we can actually use it. So then our platform conduct, what it allows is it allows companies to onboard their employees, and through integration or without integration. But as employees come and go, you have your own diversity dashboard. Like, you can just refresh it and you will know how things have changed,
Oh, wow.
right? And this is across 10 metrics. We're not just talking about women and men, we are talking about number of years of experience, people who are married, people who are single, people who are single parent, and so on and so forth. And how they're growing in the different functions of the organization also. And this allows you in a dedicated manner to create interventions. If a certain number went down and it keeps going down, would you not know where to prioritize them?
Right.
Oh, that's
Right. So
lovely.
this is just one of the ways in which we are using technology to assist the organizations that we work with. Another thing I can mention is complaint filing. Fragmented workplaces, employees joining from different locations, from their home and other spaces. There's so much absence of visibility that in order to actually find the fastest process
Process.
to raise a complaint, in the absence of not knowing or not having this connectivity, my complaints sometimes will just get lost. And this is what I have seen as journey
Yeah.
of Ungender and beyond also. When we
Yeah.
ask people, why did you not complain? 8 out of 10 people will say their reason will be they were not sure who all will be privy to it, and what the process is like. So it was just easier not to go
Easier.
ahead.
Yeah.
Or they told some people, they told their immediate supervisor, or they told somebody that they know, and that just got lost in the entire system. So we created a centralized reporting system. Once again, wherever you are from, and it will go directly to the redressal committee of your location and your business unit. And this is something that we have implemented for conglomerates as complex as, let's say, 90 business units and having more than 100 ICs. Now imagine somebody sitting in one city replying part of a business unit and their IC in that specific zone. If I could just directly raise my complaints with them, and then my redressal process can start within a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
It saves so much more further trauma, discomfort to
Hmm.
both
Yeah.
companies and the individuals. So centralizing certain things and making sure that people have the shortest connectivity
Yeah.
when certain incidents happen is very important. So data is being used in this and many more manners. I'll be happy to talk about if we have time. To give companies one connected accessibility vice
Yeah.
both ways, employees as well as companies leaders also. Second, making sure that they have the pulse. See, culture is such an ambient term. We
True.
throw it around like very quickly. We're saying we have this kind of
Hmm.
culture and that kind of culture, but can you quantify that culture? And can you say that the culture of my overall organization, but my finance team sitting in Pune will have a very different culture compared to my finance team sitting in, let's say, Chennai.
Yeah.
Right.
And
True.
that's something that companies know, but they don't know what's the difference.
Hmm. Hmm.
So through technology and data, we're also telling them that difference so that they don't assume that my team sitting in Chennai is experiencing and behaving and enjoying and having the same kind of engagement as my team sitting in Chennai.
Yeah.
This also is something that we extract from the platform only through conversational bot based interactions and giving culture analytics to companies once again on their dashboard,
Yeah.
which tells them that, okay, where do I need to intervene? So if my team in specific area or specific locations is responding in this manner, let's say on their behavior related to what do they find appropriate.
Yeah.
Let's say this percentage of people in that team will not even intervene if they see something is going, inappropriate in the work environment. It's an immediate indication to me that I need to talk to them about, let's say, bystander activation,
Yeah.
or I need to talk to them about how to be more vigilant as a team member,
Yeah.
right? And in the absence of that, we are just creating overarching and umbrella interventions. They will land with some people, they will not land with some people. But we
Yeah.
can't start with the assumption that everybody is great, and we also can't start with the assumptions that everybody is not so great.
Yeah.
We have to know how our team is to speak to them in that manner. So these are in some of
Absolutely.
the ways that we have been using, conduct our technology platform to help companies.
Right, right. No, that's great, Pallavi. But you did mention that there are a lot of different companies from different industries to come to you, uh, just talking about their diversity workbook. So, how does Ungender design and deliver and customize some of the industry specific products for them and services also for like different sectors and organizations?
Hmm. With technology, without technology?
Both.
Both. Okay. Okay. So with technology, it's easy to standardize things, and when it comes to content curation, of course, it differs, Devika, because at the end of the day, every company wants their team members to be educated and to be made aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, One great thing that we at Ungender take a lot of pride in is that we'll never say no to somebody saying that we don't have this. Now, depending on the nature of the organization, let's start with this. If we have to do intervention, let's say in healthcare,
Yeah.
we have to understand that healthcare is already more inclusive when it comes to the presence. There's more
Hmm.
presence of gender there.
Right.
And most of the the players or the companies in healthcare sector, they're convinced that they're very inclusive as an
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
There, the first challenge is to actually break down the data points for them and to actually show them that at the end of the day, where exactly is this present.
Yeah.
Their technology will come very handy. So
Hmm.
that's where we do a plugin of let's do the audit first, or let's look at the dashboard first, because it's very important to know that. And but this is also for large companies because it's more difficult to do it without technology. Then we have to look at who exactly is the audience. So one is what the current diversity space of that specific industry. Second is to know what kind of segment that we are dealing with. What is the complexity of that industry that we are dealing with? Is it something that's in retail space where people are more on ground, the educational qualification, understanding, professional experience are very different? Then the examples, then the stories, that the interventions need to be very different because just saying that something as simple as that expecting that people will be able to use the technology will also not be possible, Devika.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of bias that all of us are carrying, wherein we assume that everyone will have phone. मतलब किसके पास phone नहीं है? And even beyond that, we think that किसके पास who doesn't have smartphone these days?
True.
Right.
And we'll be surprised to see how many people actually don't have smartphones, right? And especially when you're creating for a segment which is already in minority, both economically as well as work-wise. Assuming that you're creating a mechanism for a workforce which is working on ground, solar panel industry. Okay, there you cannot use technology to educate people on ground. These are daily wage individuals who are being picked up from different spaces in the village. You don't even know if the same person will be coming tomorrow. So you have to realize that you have to create education and awareness on a day-to-day basis for new
Right.
people who are coming in. These
Yeah.
are not the people who will be working in a space because it's a vast open land.
Yeah.
So you don't have any walls to put posters on. Even if you put posters there, nobody is bothering to read it. They just like nobody cares putting
Yeah.
that on the wall there. You can't really have somebody do awareness session every day because that's not really very practical as a way. These are the challenges. So very important to know what are the audience that we are creating the solution for.
Yeah.
And when
Right.
we do that, like this examples that
Hmm.
I'm giving you, these are the industries when we have sat down and we have said that okay, POSH compliance, if you have to take hypothetically, okay, we have written the policy. Okay, we have constituted the IC. But what about awareness program?
Yeah.
Yes, you have to do it for formality's sake. You can just create a flyer and then you can just say that, okay, distribute it to
Circulated. Yeah.
everybody without worrying about whether they'll understand or not understand. But who are you creating for? And those are the companies that we have thoroughly enjoyed and take pride in working with because they want to go deep.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a checklist thing that we are working on. And same way, be it media and production houses or film industry, hardcore solar plant, mining, road construction. These are also one of the few of the most exciting projects, Devika. I'll be very honest that we have worked.
I'm sure.
Now, creating for the standard offices that people like you and I sit in
Hmm.
is almost like a no-brainer, and that's where we came up with the technology because that's where we know technology can replace.
Right.
Yeah.
But these are the exciting ones that we have come up with. One of the challenges that we were looking at when we started building the technology platform was the problem statement that how do we make sure that people are actually learning about proper and improper workplace behavior, which is
Yeah.
very true because this is more about unlearning than learning.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, everything under the parameter of DEI is about just making sure that people know people don't behave in an inappropriate manner in the workplace,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's true.
Doesn't matter who they are dealing with, but how do you actually get this message across? It
Yeah.
cannot be done by a policy document. It cannot be done by making redressal committees. And it definitely cannot be done by making town hall speeches
Yeah.
Right.
because it's the individual approach. So
For sure.
that's where we created these conversational modules, which chart out a very different trajectory of learning for, let's say, Tanika versus
Yeah.
Devika,
Hmm.
getting people to create their own learning map. Because at the end of the day, one thing that I'm very convinced of is there's not a single person on this planet who will say, I don't care about becoming a better leader or better manager or better
Of
colleague
course.
or better
Right.
employee. And I'm not going on human because, like I said, our space is limited to workplace, but everybody wants to become better at
Yeah.
whichever level they are because everyone wants to grow. Now, when it comes to the DEI space, nobody understands why and how they should do it. So we also give them to chart out their own individual learning. Once again, customization. So you're talking about how do we do it for individual industry and company, Devika? We are solving it for individual. We are saying, Devika, how would you want to grow
Yeah.
when it
Yeah.
comes to this particular lens? And then creating your own learning path.
I think how you've elaborated in such a, I think, beautiful way is also something that we were also very very engrossed into, because not a lot of people give a lot of thought into it. Us being employees also, we don't give a lot of thought into something like this, and how it's coming across, and how should we even perceive it in our day to day just being actually. And to you mentioned Porsche also. I think now Porsche has become a very, very important, part of each and every one of our, companies. And so, how do you streamline the entire Porsche Act when it comes to, compliance based? Considering, the government has also played a lot of emphasis on it now. They've also written down various guidelines, and so how does Ungender offer to assist in terms of Posh Act essentially
To the companies, to individuals,
to
or to
to
the
the companies to the companies?
companies? Okay. See, the basic framework is missing in a lot of companies, and I'll go back to connecting with what Devika you had said, creating things for individual organizations or challenges. Right? If you look at startups right now, the lean ones,
Yeah,
yes,
Yeah.
one is priority because nobody from their investor circle is giving this as a priority.
yeah,
Unless the time of funding comes in and it shows up in their audit due diligence, it doesn't really get the priority that it should get. So
yeah,
that's one. Priority is low. Second is, even if priority is
Hmm.
finds its space, cost then becomes a concern because I do look at this particular advisory as a premium advisory.
yeah,
It is not something that can come as part of a entire package of anything that somebody is doing. And I know a lot of people as CAs, CS, legal counsels are giving it as a part of the capsule, but that's a very that's not customized to the company. Let's start from
Yeah.
that. Customized. And then the third thing is that there's still a little bit of
True. True.
professionality and assistance required from a team when they start this journey, if they
yeah,
want to do it properly. So there are also people missing. Most of the time, it's the founders themselves who will end up taking
Right.
the ownership of it. So one unique scenario in which we work with lean teams, this is where technology becomes very assistive because these are the teams which require a very cost effective solution, and humans will always be more expensive.
yeah,
Will always be, especially when they're bringing a lot of knowledge and expertise on the table.
yeah,
So that's where the cost effectiveness becomes very helpful for lean teams. The second part is to the human assistance that we are talking about. With the technology in place, with platform like Conduct in place, where
yeah,
companies don't really have to worry about looking at reminding their employees on a day-to-day basis, having a space to publish their policies, even having an FAQ section where the employees can then just come and like learn about their relevant things related to this particular law. There's a lot of reminder work that goes into it, and that's where lean teams miss out on a major compliance aspect.
yeah.
And because of these first two things, they also start doing shoddy compliance. What does a
Oh,
shoddy compliance look like? That means that you've
Yeah.
created a policy, but you've not been able to circulate it.
yeah, yeah,
You put it somewhere on
True.
Notion or
True.
someplace. Is it intentional? Absolutely not. Right? It's coming because there's no other person to do it.
yeah,
What does a shoddy compliance look like? Maybe one single session in a year where
Right.
half-baked information is done. Somebody internal from the team will do it. So here the technology solution, which takes care of 90% of the work and 10% is like with our human experts, helps leaner teams in this.
understood.
Then you have larger teams where you have to focus more on how the internal committee will continuously get educated. There are new case laws which are coming up
Yeah,
every month
yeah,
now, almost
every
every
month,
month.
yeah.
But because companies can't really afford to run certificate programs or capacity building programs, then can we have something which is in bite-sized module that can be delivered to IC members that they can consume and be ready as and when the case will come? Because you don't get ready when a complaint is there on your doorstep.
Yeah, yeah,
You prepare for it. This once again is something that is assisted by technology and with experts at our end. The then there's of course a lot of money goes in whenever a complaint comes in. So one funny thing that I hear in the
right.
industry is we did not have any complaints till the time we started the posh compliance. Of course you will not have any complaint, right? So now some leaders will funnily just say that we were better off till the time we started the compliance because now we have cases. You always had incidents happen.
Yeah, yeah,
The only issue was that there was no confidence that we can raise it internally, right? But as and when you start the compliance process, then you also need to make sure that you don't end up bearing so much of the cost of it that you now start running from it,
Yeah.
which also happens
Yeah.
because posh case inquiries are an expensive affair. So once again, we use technology, our conduct incident reporting and case management system, which saves almost 70% of the time as well as cost that companies usually incur. Um, Creating this balance and this combination of offering between how much technology can take care of standardizing the process, making sure there's a system of records for companies. Devika, you'll be surprised to know how many companies come to us who are not able to locate their past years' awareness session documents or ACR submission
No,
proof of
okay.
receipt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have no idea, or people leave from the team and they don't know at what stage certain complaint that was ongoing was at. Um, this entire
Right.
system, so internal committee as a function does not exist in 99% of the organizations right now. It takes a lot for internal members and also the external members to sit with the companies and say that this will become a function which will have its own SOPs, which will have its own standards, which will have its own protocols, SLAs, and so on and so forth. In the space of POSH compliance, this is what we have accomplished. Like I know that in the overall DI space,
Right.
there's a long way to go. But using technology to create these interventions and a systematic approach for companies, for POSH, this is what we proudly say that we have accomplished to create for
Understood.
organizations.
Right. So you did mention incident reporting, and we would love to talk more about it more depth. So could you just tell us more about the centralized incident reporting system with like conduct and how it streamlines the reporting process for all your
Yes.
employees?
So think of a small organization or a large organization. In a large organization, let's say like the biggest organization that we are working with right now has about 40,000 employees and about 225 ICs or so. Right. Now,
Okay.
and then you can think the same, like how simple it will be for a single one. Now, when an employee wants to file a report, they do not know where exactly to go, especially for expanded and
Right.
large workspaces like this, spaces like this. They'll most probably go to their immediate supervisor. Maybe my immediate supervisor is Tanika, or I will go to, let's say, the local HR, which Devika could be you. One of these things can happen. The people who are actually assigned to hear me out, they are very invisible to me. Right? And then maybe Tanika will hear, and then
Hmm.
Tanika will tell Devika, and then Devika will say that, okay, let me see that. So imagine the different point of contacts that an aggrieved individual will have to go through by the time they reach the actual entity, which is Internal Complaints Committee.
Yeah.
And in that process, also, I would have ended up repeating my complaint several times. I would have said different versions of it. And I'll have to repeat it all again because internal committee process is like another legal process and it requires a different set of instructions and guidelines.
Yeah.
It takes too much time, it takes too much energy, and a lot gets lost in this process. People leave companies,
Right.
with, people intend to withdraw, people have given up, or people by that time would have also spoken to so many other people from a different space altogether. So that's one thing that we are taking care by incident reporting, making sure that if ever a person wants to file a complaint, two things will happen. If I have any doubt, I should be able to talk to somebody anonymously just to understand what the steps are.
Yeah.
I may choose or not choose to file a complaint. That's a different thing. But I have a right to get my doubts clarified and get
Clarified.
assistance in an anonymous manner and then make an
Yeah.
informed decision. Once I have made an informed decision, then I receive a guided process to tell me what happened, how should I go about filing the complaint, what kind of details are required, because 5 out of 10 complaints that will reach the IC will have major details missing in it.
Yeah.
Maybe the witness name will be missing, or evidences will be
Right.
missing, or the complaint will be written in a slightly ambiguous manner that the IC will tell them again to fill it up, and so on and so forth. So, with a guided process, you get it right at the first go
Yeah. Yeah.
and less frustration once again.
Yeah.
So, centralized system is saving time, less frustration, less trauma, um, energy is saved, and more trust is instilled. And it reaches directly, not from a legal lens, to the entity where it is supposed to reach.
Yeah.
Because the number of people the
Yeah.
complaint changes hands, ears with, also violates confidentiality. So a centralized system, Devika, not only assists the person who is aggrieved, but it also assists immensely to the organization. And I'll come on the second side here. Here's an internal committee which is sitting. Maybe they would have received 4 hours, 6 hours, max to max 8 hours of training so far from the time. And max to max 8 hours is like I'm giving you best case scenario right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And a lot of time they only go through
Right.
half an hour of orientation session that is
True.
given to them. So they have no idea now what
Yeah.
to do. So either they will start talking to each other or they will end up sending some, ambiguous mail response. Who should actually be
Hmm.
part of the quorum? Majority of them don't even know what quorum is. What is the way forward? In their ignorance, see, in IC process, there's no morality. There's only one legal aspect that you need to take care of. Ethics, self-moral, and all those things are actually taking a backseat here. What a standardized process allows them to do is it nudges them that, okay, now you have received a complaint, now do this. So even what they're supposed to think is what is being told to IC members. What are the
Understood.
checkpoints that they're supposed to keep in place is also told to them.
Mm-hmm.
The communication while they're thinking what they're told or guided to think like, um, the communication that needs to be sent to respective parties, and there are multiple parties that you have to reach out to once you receive a complaint, is
Yeah.
also ready for them at the click of a finger. So there's a 16 to 20
Yeah.
step by step procedure of what internal committee members should do once they receive a complaint.
Understood.
For large
Right.
ICs or small IC or a single IC, it gets more complex. I mean, when we started building it, we built it for keeping enterprises in mind. For large ICs, standardizing the process is very crucial because what you don't want is one IC sitting in some remote area of this country
Yeah.
sending a very different email with a different SLA
Yes. Yeah.
compared to, let's say, your IC sitting in your
Yeah.
corporate office.
True.
So,
Definitely.
how do you standardize the knowledge? If you can't standardize the knowledge, at least you can standardize the process that each one of them is supposed to follow. So that's what the centralized incident reporting mechanism does, making sure confidentiality is not violated, making sure timelines are not violated,
Hmm.
making sure everybody is following the same process, making sure everybody is following the same script, at least in writing. Now, a lot of people come and say that, okay, what about the meetings that they're doing? Well, that's why your external member will step in.
Yes.
But at some point in time, Devika, we are also going to get into that space. Preparing for the interview, preparing for your first meeting with the complainant, preparing for your joint meeting with both parties.
Yeah.
Because the law is so new, even after
New.
10 years. It's just 10
True.
years old. And the, the knowledge of internal committee members, it's not a full time knowledge. It's
True.
a very anecdotal knowledge. That means if they've handled a case, then they have a knowledge of one case. And how severe, complex, or light that case was is the limit of their knowledge and experience.
Absolutely.
Whereas we are bringing a knowledge of close to 8,000 workplace misconduct cases
Yeah.
and converting that into best practice in terms of process, standards, SLAs as part of the incident reporting and centralized complaint management system.
Thank you so much for explaining that in such detail. I mean, that is something again, like I said earlier, we do not pay so much heed to in our day to day life, considering employees also, and of course, that's a right. Like you said, everybody should know and should be, aware of, well aware of. And we're delighted to have you today. Thank you so much for for everybody who's listening. I'm sure they would be now very well versed with what happens when it comes to compliances and what happens when it comes to going on the other flip side of how the management is supposed to be compliant with everything. So it was lovely having you, Pallavi. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being with Eagle Bay here today. And we look forward to having you, meeting you in person also, and having a conversation and a cup of coffee or something like that definitely in the future.
No, definitely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pallavi, for your time, and thanks for beautifully explaining to us everything and what Ungender does. And of course, as Tanika said, we would love to meet you in person very soon also.
No, absolutely. And thank you for picking this up.
Yeah.
POSH, because of its lack of adequate knowledge, people find a mockery of it, or people find it scary.
Right.
DEI as an intervention and as a space is not able to achieve whatever it should be achieving because it is
Yeah.
missing a lot of data and structure to it. So every time we have
Right.
conversations like this, a lot of myths gets busted. So thank you
Yeah.
for this opportunity on behalf of the entire Ungender team. Wish you both a very inclusive day ahead
You
and
too,
week.
and we're very excited to see how
Thank you.
Ungender will, unravel in the future. And all the very best
Yeah.
to you and Ungender, and great work ahead. And wishing you all the luck in love.
Thank you. Take care, both of you.
Thank you, Pallavi.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Have an amazing day ahead. Bye bye.